We do apologize for the quality of the video there. It is Gabriel Kudaka coming to us live from Sindar in Marakwet East in the county of Elgeyo Marakwet, just a kilometer from the scene of the helicopter crash that killed 10 KDF servicemen, including the Chief of Defense Forces, General Francis Ogolla. And now with that, and because power abhors vacuum, the current conversation at State House and in military circles is who takes over from the late Francis Ogolla. And now is NTV's Brian Obuya attempting to answer that question.
After 355 not-so-easy days in office as Kenya's Chief of the Defense Forces, Thursday afternoon's chopper crash cuts short General Francis Ogolla's service just 10 days before he clocks the one-year mark in office and slightly over a year before his expected mandatory retirement from the military sometime in 2020. The unfortunate crash throwing the military into succession talks, which for the very first time in the history of the Kenya Defense Forces is happening following the death of a serving chief of the Defense Forces. So, who takes over the command of the KDF? The Kenya Defense Forces comprises the Kenya Army protecting the country on land, the Kenya Navy mandated to protect our country in the waters, and the Kenya Air Force taking charge of our security in the air. Before ascending to the apex position, Ogolla served as Vice Chief of the Defense Forces and Commander of the Kenya Air Force. His ascension was in line with the Tonje rules that have for years now defined succession in the Kenyan military. So, what are these rules? Well, sometime back, after the 1982 attempted takeover by the military, there was a man named Daudi Tonje. Tonje served as Chief of Staff of the Kenya Armed Forces during President Moi's reign between 1996 and 2000, introducing great reforms in the military. One of them was the rotational appointment of the Chief of Defense Forces. Now with that, back to the succession talks. General Ogolla, himself an Air Force pilot, was drawn from the Kenya Air Force, and his predecessor, General Robert Kibochi, drawn from the Kenya Army. Before the two was General Samson Mwathethe of the Kenya Navy. If the rotational nature of the Tonje rules would again be followed in appointing the next Chief of Defense Forces, as is expected, then that man will come from the Kenya Navy. In the Navy, there are only two people who would be ripe for that position. One of them is Lieutenant General Charles Kahariri, who is the Vice Chief of Defense Forces, and the other is Lieutenant General Jimson Mutai, who is currently serving as the Vice Chancellor of the National Defense University. Those are the men to watch. With Kahariri having deputized Ogolla and being in the Navy, he is one step ahead of Jimson Mutai. With that, he stands the higher chance of taking over as the country's new commander of the armed forces. Now listen, this will be his second appointment in just 1 month after his promotion to the position of Vice CDF on March 8 this year. But you also need to know the Daudi Tonje rules are not in the Kenya Defense Forces Act, and they are not even documented anywhere. They may not necessarily be followed, even though it has been the tradition for decades. The Kenya Defense Forces doctrines provide that a general retires upon attainment of 62 years of age or having served a full term of 4 years, whichever comes first. In the instant case, the cruel hand of death introduces a first in the military succession as General Ogolla makes his final salute as Chief of Defense Forces. Brian Obuya, NTV.
Thank you, Brian. Brian Obuya.